Good afternoon, and to whoever is listening, and if you're listening back, a happy welcome to Tree Talk, episode 202. It'll probably be a primarily football focused episode. We have the quarterfinals in the senior, intermediate, and junior championships coming this weekend after an eventful final round. And we obviously had the ladies' senior football final over the weekend. So we'll be talking through them, we'll be going through other issues, such as the Camogie Championships, issues with referees, and we'll be looking back briefly on the Senior Hurling Championship. So stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well, God, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
How are you keeping, Matt?
Good, Jack. Good. Every time I see that, I lament the fact that Kieran Carey never won an All Ireland. What a superb hurler. What a piece of skill. That is one of the iconic points since the game was formed. It was simply magic to be there that day, unbelievable. And the importance of it. Clare were All Ireland champions, and they were knocked out. It was the knockout stages of the Munster Championship then, look, it is a very, very special moment.
Yeah, I suppose wherever my camera is today, you'll see that I've a Cork jumper on today. I was living with a lad from Cork, so I apologise for that. But you make a good point there about Kieran Carey and players.
Jack.
No, not at all.
Do I fully know who I'm talking to today?
Ballysteen through and through, and Limerick obviously as well. But you make the interesting point there, Kieran is one of the best to not win in All Ireland. That I suppose it's a possibility once the championships come to conclusion. That's something we'll look into, because obviously the list from Limerick is large, and obviously Waterford will have their say, and Clare as well. So it'll be a good topic to get into. But I suppose before we get into the games, Matt, looking outside.
But just to finish on that point, Jack, a point like that, the skill that was shown in that, it takes a very, very, very special player to execute it.
Oh yeah, it does. Special doesn't half cover it when you come to Kieran Carey. But I suppose looking outside, it's a dry day. But yesterday was a really miserable day. But probably the first one of the year, and we're so deep into our hurling and football championships that it's great that we've got this far. And there's opinions on the split season and all that. But one thing is for sure, there's been really enjoyable group stage games, and the weather does play a huge part.
It does, and despite the inclement weather yesterday that you referred to, there were a couple of games played last night. There was a semi-final in the City Junior B Football Championship, and the second semi-final in the South were played. So, the weather didn't deter them. But we've been very, very lucky, Jack, with the weather so far this year. And the competitions, they are very, very, very condensed, leaving very little room for anything to go wrong. And certainly the one major factor that could disrupt everything and derail everything would be if you got an exceptionally bad day that was playing, and that perhaps all the fixtures would fall foul of it because of prevailing conditions and because of ground conditions. Thankfully, we haven't been confronted with that this year, and hopefully we won't.
Yeah, I suppose we could have the situation, and just listen to Jimmy Lee last week, where you have certain teams playing, on the same weekend. Obviously, Newcastle are down very straight in the semi-final, and they played the final round of the Premier Intermediate Championships that weekend. And if KP come through this weekend, they'll have hurling and football clashing. That it is so condensed, but we are running the risk of player burnout. But it is tough for the people making the fixtures, and I don't want to be, I suppose, given out, but the fact that we have the senior intermediate football semi-finals at the same time this weekend is just disappointing, I suppose, really, because there's a couple of games there that I'd love to have gone to see, and you'd have gone to see all 4 of them if you could. But the fact you have to choose one, it's just a pity, and hopefully it's the last we'll see or something like that. Now, again, the people making the fixtures, I don't envy them because it is a very difficult task.
I took a phone call yesterday from somebody that was very, very put out about the whole thing. He was somebody that would dearly love to have attended the Father Casey's and Kildare Palace Kinry quarter final, and if he could, would have loved to have seen Gerald Griffin's and St Sinnans, which is big, huge West Derby, and a game that's going to be very, very tight, and probably one of the games of the championship. So I cannot understand it. I 4 major games on at 4 o'clock. I would appeal to the county board. Would they please look at it? Like, could we have staggered times, even 2 hours apart? If the intermediate could have been at 2 o'clock now. I know a lot of people say the answer to this is double fixtures, but there's considerable risk attending to double fixtures because you're very, very much at the mercy of the weather. And I understand, and I get all that. But where you've decided to have 4 single fixtures and 4, let's call it, Jack, in terms of the football championship, there are 4 major games. Because here we are now, we're transitioning from the group stages to the knockout stages. This is where, from the very start of the competition, the clubs wanted to be. And like supporters, like they like to see as many of the knockout games as they possibly can. And like, it certainly crystallized it for me when that man spoke with me yesterday on it. And I think I share his disappointment, I have to say. And I would appeal to the county board to look at it and see if we could have, if these games could be staggered, it would be most helpful for everybody. But you're talking about, you mentioned there, vaguely referenced about burnout and all that sort of thing. I think for the first weekend, really, last weekend, Jack, I got a bit of it being out and about how challenging that particularly dual clubs have found the current season. They feel that it's condensed, it's week on, week in, week out, hurling and football, and that the players aren't seen at their best because of the demands on them. Now, that's a debate for another day, and it's a debate that's above our pay grade anyway, Jack, but it's something I picked up last weekend now. I don't know if you were out and about as well, and I don't know if you picked it up, but I certainly picked it up.
Yeah, I suppose it depends how a team is going. Like, you look at Limerick Palace Kenry, and they've 9 weeks on the trot done, or 10 weeks on the trot done. They'll have an 11th this weekend, and they just keep winning. I think, judging from them, they might have been a bit tired on the field, but off it, they certainly seemed to be ready for every game. And afterwards, I think when results came in that they knew they were through, it gave them more energy. But it is extremely tough for teams, and I suppose for more rural areas or small clubs, when you're relying on the same set of lads to go to the well in hurling and football, it's all the more difficult. If you have maybe only 2 or 3 crossing over, it's probably far more doable. But when you're relying on a core bunch, it can become extremely difficult. But credit to players, they're getting nothing for it, only the love of the club, and they go out in all kinds of weather and all kind of conditions, and do the best they can. So they have to be praised for that. But it is definitely a debate for another day, Matt. But
I'm slow to apportion blame to anybody on this, Jack, because it's brought about by the multiplicity of competitions that we have, and meeting deadlines for Munster Club Championships and all that. And I get all that, and it's a debate for another day. But I suppose it would be part of a broader debate encompassing the split season, perhaps. Those that where I was picking it up, they were apportioning blame to the split season system, but I think that's a bit simplistic. An awful lot of players were very happy with the split season. I'd say more happy than unhappy.
Yeah, and I think it's important that the players are the ones that have a huge say in the decision, and it's good that we've tried it for a year, because obviously it was COVID enforced first of all, and this is probably the first real year of being able to go to as many games as you want and crowds and etc. And we'll see how it goes. There's obviously provincial championships to go yet, and then
but there is another unseen factor which would be peculiar to Limerick at the moment, Jack, and that is Limerick's success.
Yeah.
Which means that the club season is contracted that bit, because Limerick, reaching the All Ireland final, were Limerick to, be knocked out at the Munster stage, it would give a much greater window of opportunity, maybe to spread the competitions out. Not that I'm advocating it for 1 minute. It would give an opportunity. You'd have an extra month to play with, Jack, which are 6 weeks, which would be very, very important.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the case by case basis on every year. Like Limerick won All-Ireland this year, they could be gone in Munster next year, and they'll have that extra month and a half. But I like that it's been tried, and get the players due after a year and try it again next year and see, because something did need to be changed, because the club players at the same time maybe had one game in the space of 16 or 17 weeks in the prime season of summer. So I suppose that's a debate for another day. We have plenty of action to look back on. I mentioned KP there; they're through to a quarter final at the first time of asking, I suppose, at Ballysteen's expense and Galtagale's expense. I suppose you were in Kilfinnan, I was in the Bog Garden. I was on the sideline doing water and a bit of stats, and I was keeping up to date with proceedings in Ballylanders and Galtagales, but I did have a feeling that Bally would have one kicking on before the relegation final, which is actually this weekend, so they'll come into it with, I suppose, huge momentum after beating Galtagales. But you spoke to me afterwards, and the disappointment it must be for Galtagales, who I suppose didn't have it in their own hands. They didn't know they had it in their own hands, but to lose the team that were relegated already, fair credit to Ballylanders, who, like Blackrock the week before, gave a performance even though they knew they were relegated or in a relegation final. But it's a huge opportunity missed for Galtagales.
It is, and they realise it now, because as events were unfolding, and it had filtered through that Ballysteen were winning at one stage by 4 or 5 points, and you would have think that would have driven on Galtagales, but they were caught with a smash and grab at the end by the Danny Froon goal. Like, they had come from 5 points down to lead by 2 points just as we were heading up for the hour mark, and then Danny, who was outstanding for Bally now on last Saturday, he scored a goal in 5 points, Jack, and he got a couple of excellent points from play, and he came up with that winning goal, and it deprived the Gaels, in the circumstances. They didn't know it until a couple of minutes afterwards of what had transpired in the Bog Garden. But I would imagine that they would probably have been happier had Kildimo Palace Kennery won, in that that the result wouldn't have mattered anyway. But it was a huge disappointment, and it was a glorious chance for them to advance to the quarter final. Now, the kick was in Ballylanders, and it's the second game in a row, Jack, that Ballylanders have shown considerable improvement. Like, they were distinctly unlucky in the penultimate round against Adair not to have got something. They were beaten by a point, and they made most of the running. Now, Galtagales, they had a very poor first half, Jack, and it really came back to haunt them. Ballylanders had got 5 points clear by half time, and they maintained that for a lot of the half. Now, Hugh Maloney was sent off to a red card in the first half. They were down to 14 players. And Stephen Fox was sent off. Stephen Fox, who was absolutely outstanding, had a goal and 2 points, scored the goal from a penalty at the stage that he was sent off in the 40th minute. And it evened up things, and it evened up things considerably. And the Gaels then got a penalty, and it was down to a 1 point game. And it, it was toing and froing for a small bit, but eventually the Gaels drew level and got 2 points clear. But they were stung by that goal by Danny Froon. But the result, you see, performance against the Dare was very, very good and deserved more than losing by a point. And you'd have to say on Saturday that the Ballylanders' performance, it would have been very rough justice on them had they lost the match. Now, had it been a draw, fair enough. But because they applied themselves really from the start, and like they laid down markers from the start, and they were boosted with 15 minutes to go when Jimmy Barry Murphy returned after injury, and got 15 minutes under his belt now, which will be he's a huge boost, of course, to have him back for particularly for Sunday against Galway. And I know we'll probably be referring to it later.
Yeah, I suppose for our point of view in Ballycee, we knew that we needed a favour from Ballylanders, and at one stage, as you said, we were 4 clear and Bally were 5 up, and you're thinking there isn't going to be a 9 point swing, but slowly but surely KP got back into the game, and to their credit, they were very good in the second half. They kind of kept with the boys in the first half. I think there was 3-0 or 4-0 at half time, but slowly but surely they eked their way back into the game, and we got a man sent off then. But it was a really surreal kind of feeling at full time. The ball was right beside me when it finished over by the sideline, and I knew, like, obviously our game was a draw. I knew that it finished as a draw, but you were kind of trying to get an update from Kilfinnan, and the word was filtering in that Danny Froon got the goal. And for KP, like, to their credit, after reaching the hurling quarterfinal the previous week for the first time in 85 years, to reach the football equivalent a week later, like, it's incredible what they're doing over there. For ourselves, it was definitely a missed opportunity. The lads played very well in the first half. Davy Shaughnessy was brilliant throughout the game. I think he got 1-6 or so out of 1-7. But just didn't score enough on the day, and KP deserving over the course of the campaign to go through. And after 5 games, the cream will rise to the top, and that's the case. And I suppose going into their quarter final this week, we'll get back to the relegation final afterwards. But Kildimo Palace-Kenner are playing Father Casey's in a quarter final. The last time they met was the 2018 junior semi-final, KP's first team against Casey's a second team, which is mad to think. But Casey's did show against Newcastle, why they are probably favoured beside Newcastle and Adair. Really put up to defending champions, and unlucky not to get a draw or even a win. But it's a real tall order for KP.
It's a tall order, Jack. But if you look at Kildimo Palace-Kennery's record in football, it's simply phenomenal. Junior B champions in 2014, Junior A champions 2018.
Matt's gone there for a second. He's just going through KP's, I suppose, outstanding performances in the football in recent years. He'll be back to us in a second. But
the Gremlins, down the estuary in Ballystine, I think.
I don't think so, even though it has started raining. But you had got as far as 18 when they won the Junior A Championship. I'll let you go from there.
And they added the intermediate last year, 2021, and now to make the cut for the knockout stages. It absolutely is simply phenomenal rise. Actually, Kildimo Palace-Kennery at this stage are in bonus territory as far as this competition is concerned. Yeah. Because there is no doubt that their first target this year was to avoid relegation and consolidate. They've done more than that. Now, maybe the gods have shone upon them, and Danny Froon shone upon them with that late goal that helped them. But in the swings and roundabouts during the year that you get your look, and but I think that they're there on merit, and they're not going to Newcastle West at all on Saturday to make up numbers.
No, they
They're
aren't.
there,
But
they're there to give it a good go, and they're quite capable of doing it.
you'd still have to fancy Casey's from what we've seen so far this year, that they seem to be putting it together.
Yeah, Casey's, and it's a happy annual with us, but they haven't won a knockout game since 2009, Jack, when they beat Pallasgreen in the county semi-final, which is a phenomenal long time, and they have been perennially involved in the knockout stages practically since, but just haven't been able to get over the line. So that in itself will bring a small bit of pressure with it. But most of those people that were around in 2009, it's a new look for the Casey's team, Jack. The team has evolved over the years, and what we're seeing now is that players from recently successful minor teams are coming through successfully, and they're filtering them through. And any way you look at it, Jack. And now I saw him against Galway. I was very, very unimpressed with him. But I saw him against Monagea, and I was hugely impressed by him. I suppose the real case is somewhere in between. I'd say more towards the Monagea performance. And they're going to be very, very difficult to beat, but they just cannot. They've got to get it out of their mind. They've got to park it. This knockout hoodoo. They cannot allow it to come back to haunt them on Saturday.
Yeah, it's incredible to note that it's gone back 13 years, and they're like you mentioned that they've nearly reached knockout stages in every year, and there's been a lot of games that come to my mind where they went in as raging hot favourites and just couldn't get the job done. Like even the last 3 years against Monagea last year, I fenced them against Palestine. The previous year they came in after beating Adair, who were the champions at the time and who went on to win the championship. And Kieran's beat them the year before that, and they were heavily fancied in all those games. That something has to click eventually, but they do seem to be integrating those players that you mentioned through the likes of Eli Reardon and Shane O'Connell and Sean Kilbridge, Dylan Quirk, these kind of players that that they've really taken on leadership. Rory O'Brien as well. You could name them all. They've really taken on leadership roles, and they'll have no baggage really, or little to no baggage when it comes to quarterfinal.
No, and they still have the Cormac Roaches, and they still have the Robert Browns of this world, and David Ward is in or out there about the panel. Martin Scannell. So it's John Reardon. What an experienced sub to come off the bench he is. So their mix seems to be good, and they're coming along nicely, Jack. Whether it will be good enough for ultimate success or not, I don't know. Time will tell. They have to take it every step at a time. As far as they're concerned at the moment, the full focus has to be on the threat. And I don't say the word threat lightly, that Kildimo Pallasgreen are going to pose to their championship ambitions.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to remember the last time KP lost a meaningful game in hurling or football. I suppose the 2020 quarter-final, I think, in the football was the last time that they lost a knockout game in either, or I suppose last year's hurling as well, but they won a Cotton Cup final at the end of the day. So they are really, really dangerous outfit. In the other quarter-final then, St. Kieran's versus Monagea, that's on at 4 o'clock as well. In Bruff, I suppose for Kieran's, it's been a real positive year this year, considering they were in the relegation zone the last 2 years, but that's not really where they should be. They had a lot of injuries and things. What I will say is Monagea were really up par. We saw them against Father Casey's, but they were brilliant against Lahan in round 5, whereas Kieran's drew up Palestine in round 4 and lost Adair in round 5. That they're coming in with different, I suppose, form guides behind them. And even though you kind of fancy Kieran's, again, dangerous opposition are Monagea, and they're always quite good in the knockout stages.
Yeah, it's a different St. Kieran's or different Monagea team that invariably turns up in the knockout stages. They're far more formidable. Like they were at the semi-final stage last year where they ran Newcastle West to a single point. And you know, they are where every club wants to be, but they're there anyway. And they tend to be slow starters, but the form guide in recent weeks would suggest that perhaps even form is going in the opposite direction. That Monagea are finding their form now with back-to-back wins. Like you know, I honestly thought that the game between themselves and Clahan, even though I fancied Monagea, I thought that could take on being a toss-up. You know, the stakes were so high, but by God, they put it really out of Clahan's reach in the first half. You see, St Kieran's are possibly going in the opposite direction. They won their first 3 games, reeled off 3 straight wins, and then of course there was the draw with Ballysteen, and they were quite a distance, Jack, behind Adair on Sunday, apparently, from what I'm hearing. In that they got a late goal and a point, you know, which sort of sweetened their tally a bit, or enhanced their tally a bit. Even though they did miss a penalty in the closing stages, but they got a point out of it. It went over the bar. But you know, they did fall short against Adair, which would be a small bit worrying. Now, we tend to forget that the like of St Kieran's, they're every bit as much involved, Jack, in games as Kildimo Pallaskenry or Adair or any of them. They have the same games load, because they're through to the quarterfinals of the Junior A Hurling Championship, having come out of their group with 5 straight wins. So, like, and there is quite a bit of a crossover between their hurlers and their footballers. So I suppose a little bit of a dip in form would that could account for the little bit of a dip in form in the football. But you know, I think it will be a different Kieran's that will come out on Saturday. They're always going to be difficult to beat. You know, they dig in, they're resilient, and I think it will be nothing different on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a good point you make there, and I suppose they won 3 in a row in that last block of hurling as well, and that's going to take a lot out of a team in the Junior A, where it's so competitive that there's 6 teams in a group with only 2 to come out of it. So credit where credit's due there as well for all the teams doing it in dual code. But Monagea, like, again, they're very dangerous when you get to the knockout stages. Kieran's will be so desperate to prove themselves back in the knockout stages, because it's been 3 years since they got to that county semi-final, and they'll think that they should have beat Ula on that day. So, you know, they're both really intriguing matchups, these quarterfinals. On the other end of the spectrum, then you have Galway versus Ballylanders at 2:00 in Kilfinnan on Sunday afternoon in the relegation final. And not only does a relegation, you know, take on a life of its own, but a South Derby, and, you know, 2 teams that have been in the senior championship for a lot. I can't remember the last time Ballylanders were relegated, but Galway have been up for 4 or 5 years now, and it could go anywhere.
Could you know, relegation finals, they're peculiar beasts, Jack. You know, form seems to go out the window, and that's not a cliche when it comes to it. You know, the realization suddenly dawns at the 11th hour on teams that, hey, this might be our last game at this level if we don't put in something, and it invariably motivates them. But, you know, there can be no excuses made for either of these teams, Jack. You know, you're in a relegation final for a reason. That you haven't performed to the level necessary now during the year, and you can attribute some of it to bad luck, and that there has been an element to that. Maybe the God's not shining on you, but you think of St. Kieran's last year. They were beaten in their 2 games in the group stages by a single point and condemned to the relegation playoff. Like, bit of luck along the way, and they could have been in county quarter final. It's as simple as that. But yeah, this is going to be a very, very interesting. It's going to be a very, very tense game. It'll be the second week in a row, and this will be a help to Ballylanders that they have been embroiled and involved in a South Derby, in a big South Derby with the stakes high. But one way or another, come Sunday evening, there'll be a South team will have fallen off the ledge, Jack. And it's a hard one to call. Now, Jimmy Barry Murphy is back for Ballylanders. James Ryan is likely to be out for Galway. Paddy Kennedy is out for Galway. He's currently on trial at Tranmere Rovers Football Club. So that certainly will change the dynamic of the game, I think, and change the dynamic of the likely outcome.
Yeah, I suppose again the nature of their 5th round games as well, Galway losing, and they were in pole position to avoid relegation, and Ballylanders obviously winning, which we've touched on, that they have that bit of momentum behind them. It's just so hard to call. Relegation finals always take on a life of their own, and you hate to see someone go down, but that's just the nature of it, that some team has to come up and some team has to go down. But look, we mentioned Paddy Kennedy there.
It can be avoided, Jack. Come 3:30, 4 o'clock on Sunday evening, either Galway or Ballylanders are looking at the prospect of being in the hat for the 2023 County Intermediate Football Championship draw. Simple as, no hiding place.
Yeah, it is simple as that, pretty much. But I suppose when we say one team goes down, one team has to come up, and we also have the quarterfinals in the intermediate championship. We have Napier and Drumcollar Broadford are in the semi-finals. They'll play the following week. We have our 2 quarterfinals, St. Sinnans versus Gerald Griffins and an all-West Derby, and then you have the City Derby of Mungar St. Paul's versus St. Pat's. We'll start with the City Derby, St. Pat's and Mungar St. Paul's. I suppose for Pat's, this only I think their 3rd season in the grade. They're a seasoned senior team at this stage. There has been a bit of turnover, but there has been a lot of success underage. And then Mungar, have been knocking on the door. They haven't reached a final in a long time, but they've been thereabouts, always in the knockout stages. Got a good win against Sir Griffins last time out. It's an interesting game, to say the least.
It is, Jack. And you see, that group was distorted a small bit by the fact that that Bruff basically pulled out. They played in the first round and didn't play after, as far as sorry, am I mixing it up now?
Yeah, that's for St. Pat's were in that boat. We'll say they didn't get a game.
They didn't get a game. They didn't get a game, and unfortunately, that game against Bruff was in the last round.
Yeah,
which means that after a 3-week break, they're now facing into a 4-week break. And we often discuss the merits of going straight through to a semi-final and having to play a quarter-final route, and I suppose it's a continuous debate as to which is the better way to go. A consensus would seem to be emerging that that probably a quarter-final route is the better way to go. But there's parallels between St. Pat's situation and the situation, the current situation, in that Mungar St. Paul's had a game last week, and it was a fine, tough game against Gerald Griffins, the type of game you'd want going into a group stages. Yeah. And they came out of it pretty convincingly enough. Now it was 115 to 3-6 was the final score, but it was 16 scores to 9. Convincing enough in my view. Monagea have been flirting with a breakthrough, Jack. Now, you're right. There is a residue of senior players in St Pat's. It's only 2014 since St Pat's last contested a county senior football final. Like it's not light years away or anything like that, but a lot of things have changed since. I think the pendulum is swinging in favour of Monagea St Paul's in this one.
Yeah, I get predictions for both intermediate or quarterfinals at the end with the senior ones, because there's only 4 games to go through. I think for Pats, they haven't had Growth Hegarty this year. He hasn't played football. Could there be a chance we see him this Saturday with the hurlers finished? I know he's playing soccer at Ashling, but he's the sort of player that could turn a contest in his own. He's a beautiful footballer. He was one of the best in the county when he was playing inter-county for Limerick, and he's continued like that even when he's been hurler of the year and won loads of All-Stars and All-Irelands. He's the sort of player that could change a game. He's just that good.
He certainly would be a major fillip and a major boost to St Patrick's if they can get a jersey on him on Saturday. Could be a major boost, and it certainly, it could conceivably change the outcome.
Yeah, and I suppose for St Pat's as a club, there could be more in that boat that this is their season on the line, because obviously the hurlers season has just finished. They finished 5th in their group, so they won't be going into quarters or relegation. This could be St Pat's last game of the year, so you could have more numbers that you haven't had before. And same for Monagea, they do have a county cup final to play, but that's a once-off game. So there could be fellas coming back that were playing hurling that could have a bearing on this game. But the other quarter-final, 2 football strongholds, Gerald Griffins versus St Sinnans, they won't have had to worry about hurling per se. I know there's a couple of lads that hurled with a skeeting all right, but when you talk about knocking on the door, when you talk about Monagea, like Gerald Griffins will rue the fact that they didn't get over the line in 19 in either game. They had a replay as well, and 2020 against Claughaun. And we've seen what Celtic Gales and Claughaun have done in the senior ranks, that Gerald Griffins will say that could have been us, and they're in a quarter final again. But a West Derby, St Sinnans were senior as recently as 19. Again, these games are so hard to call.
Jack, Gerald Griffin's record is simply phenomenal since they won the junior championship. I think it was in 2016. This is their 6th year up anyway. And the first 2 years they were beaten in the semi-finals. The next 2 years they were beaten in the final, and last year they were beaten in the semi-final. So that is really knocking on the door. Now, St Sinnans are a bit of a yo-yo team, up and down. They were promoted in as intermediate champions in 2017. In 2018, Jack, they just missed out on the knockout stages of the championship and scoring difference.
Yeah, and the same day they should have beaten Adair, who went on to win the championship in Newcastle, and I think it was Monagea that got through instead of him.
Yeah. So
yeah, I remember that day.
And then last year they were beaten in the semi-final. So they were relegated in, of course, in 2019 and were beaten in the semi-final for the last 2 years. So this is a battle of sides knocking on the door. The door will be well broken in with all this knocking that's going on with these 2 teams anyway. But it's a fascinating game, and there'll be a lot of very good players on show here. There'll be a lot of county players on show. You'll have the like of Jim Liston, Colin McSweeney, and Tommy Griffin, Darren Noonan, Gerald Stacker, and former player Brian Scanlon. And you'll have
James Naughton, Ian Ryan,
Ian Ryan, and Ray Flaherty, and all these people with St Sinnans. So it's a game with a stellar cast in many ways, Jack. So this is going to be a very, very tight one, Jack.
Yeah, and again, it's just disappointing that you can't get to these games, because you mentioned the men that rang you. I definitely would have went to KP and Casey's and went to Ger Griffins and Sinnans as well. So it's disappointing in that regard. But I will get predictions off you later in the podcast. We obviously have Premier Junior and Junior A quarterfinals as well, but we don't have time to go through all the games, as we do say. Last Sunday we were in Bruff for the Limerick Ladies Senior Final between Monagea and St Ailbes. Monagea finally got it done against St Ailbes. They obviously won the championship last year, but a real show character from Monagea who started strongly. Katrina Davis gold. They put, I think, were they 4 clear or 5, but within an instant, St Ailbes are level. Mairead Kavanagh got 1-2 in the first half, but just grounded out in the second half. Real experience showing and thoroughly deserving over the course of the 60 minutes.
Oh, Jack! Over the course of the 60 minutes, nobody could argue with the outcome. Monagea were worthy winners. Your summation there of the game is right. St Ailbes had the better, or Monagea had the better of the exchanges in the opening quarter, and you had that Katrina Davis goal. Like, Katrina Davis is absolutely in the form of her life at the moment. She scored 1-6 in the county final on Sunday, having scored 7 points in the semi-final 4 days earlier. That's a phenomenal scoring rate, Jack. 113 in 4 days in 2 games. Then St Ailbes hit their purple patch. Like, it was a great goal from Mairead Kavanagh. Its creation was a thing of beauty. The way that Paula Donnelly lobbed the defence and picked out Mairead Kavanagh in a forest of players, and of course, when Mairead Kavanagh gets sight of goal, there's usually only one result, and she put the ball in the net, and herself and Bronna McKenna added points to put St Ailbes 2 points up at half time, and they looked to be in the driving seat, and more so in the driving seat when Emer Ryan put them 3 clear immediately after the break. But something clicked at that stage in Monagea, and I have to say that the diamond of, or the triangle of Debbie Murphy, Cameron O'Leary, and Ellie Wolfe were outstanding. Ellie Wolfe got a couple of points, quick fire points, one after another, and suddenly the gap was down, and of course then we won't say a raft of sin binnings, but we had 3 sin binnings in quick succession. Laurie O'Connor was the first into the bin. She wasn't out of the bin when she was followed in by Grace Lee, and Grace wasn't out of the bin when she was followed in by Mairead Kavanagh of St Ailbes. But at that stage, even immediately after the first sending off, Monagea had just got into their stride, Jack, and there was nothing that was going to throw them off their stride after that. And they emerged very, very worthy winners. Like, in the last 10 minutes, if you recall, like, St Ailbes incessantly pounded at the defence, at the Monagea defence, got absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. The defence held firm, held discipline, held their shape, supplemented, of course, by a number of players funneling back. Now, Kate Geary was playing in what you could call a sweeper role for the entire game. But you had additional players when they were closing out the game coming back, and actually St Ailbes, when they looked up from around midfield in the closing minutes, they had actually two banks of defenders to cope with, So yeah, look, congratulations to Monagea. It was a difficult week for them. A difficult week insofar as that they played the semi-final on Wednesday night, and so did St Ailbes, but Monagea were involved in extra time with Ballylanders, which wasn't the ideal preparation coming into a final, and one had doubts that going down the home straight, would that eventually tell on them? Not a bit of it. Not a bit of it. They closed out the game very, very comfortably and very confidently.
Yeah, and you mentioned players there that they had a number of standout players. Karen O'Leary was awarded player of the match, but I thought Deborah Murphy was brilliant in midfield. She was wing back last year. She's moved further forward and is still scoring as many. Katrina Davis, obviously, with her scoring contributions. Ellie Wolf scored a couple as well, but I thought Yvonne Lee at full back was brilliant as well. And Laurie O'Connor anchored the defence, barring those 10 minutes in the bin. But that 4-day turnaround or 3-day turnaround, whichever, because it was night time by the time they would get home, is, for whatever reason it happened, that shouldn't happen. That totally goes against player welfare. And credit to Monagea and St Ailbes that served up a really good game, considering, but it's something that needs to be addressed. You shouldn't be playing a semi-final on a Wednesday evening and probably wouldn't be home till 11, the girls from Monagea and Ballylanders with extra time, and to go again Sunday morning. I just don't think it would happen in the men's game, and there's no reason for it to happen in the ladies' game either.
No, I agree with you, Jack. And whilst whilst the clubs were anything but happy with it, once they got through to the final, full credit to Monagea and St Ailbes, they parked the issue and focused on the job in hand and got on with it and did not wallow in it or and anything like that. But Jack, you're right. It's something, I don't know where the breakdown is, but it's something that should not be allowed to recur under any circumstances. It's fair to players, unfair to supporters. I was at the semi-final on Wednesday night, and there was a huge crowd in Knocklang. Now, and it team rained down on top of us, and absolutely, it came in through my eyelashes now. And I wasn't a happy camper now. I'll tell you. Sorry.
It wouldn't be like you.
No, you're trying to get me into a rant now. I think I see you angling, but it comes down, and this is not a reflection or a criticism of Knocklang. I'm making this as a general criticism about the standard of press facilities. Like the GAA are handing out development grants there for this, that, and the next thing, and I don't ever recall a red cent being given for press facilities. Yet they want all the press coverage, and we've moved into a new phase of press coverage now, where streaming is becoming so popular. Like you were there on Sunday with us during the streaming of the county final. And it's certainly, to be standing on the sideline, it's not conducive to giving the best product to the people that are viewing. First of all, we're at ground level. Now, all right, why didn't we retreat to the stand or anything? You could say that, but there are difficulties being in the stand, as we have found out in the past. Yeah. With sound issues and the crowd cheering, and just because we're screaming in the stand doesn't mean that everybody in the stand has to have a vow of silence. But it's a bigger issue, Jack, and it's something that the GAA should look into with a view to grant aiding or grant encouraging grounds to provide press facilities. The day now of standing out on a sideline and trying to write, and try to do a report or try to do an intelligent report, that day, I'm afraid, is gone, Jack. And the authorities in Croke Park should wake up and smell the roses.
Well, you're professional as always in Bruff, and again, huge credit to Monagea and commiserations to St Ailbes. They had their days in 2019 and 2020, and they'll probably be back thereabouts next year, such has been their form. But for Monagea to get to 6 finals in a row and to win 3 of them, and to still be in the Camogie is some achievement. And on the Camogie, it's kind of up in the air at the moment. You've tried your best to get, I suppose, a clear-cut answer, but at the moment, we're down to have semi-finals this weekend, but it's only provisionally at the moment, Matt.
That's right. There was an issue with eligibility of a player, and a subsequent forfeiture of points, which would see Granabella and Gary upgraded to winners of their group, and which would in turn see Newcastle West down to second place. And the semi-finals are provisionally fixed. This thing may be subject to appeal, and the way these things can drag on. The semi-finals are provisionally penciled in for next Sunday at 12 o'clock, both of them at 12 o'clock. A hand playing Newcastle West in Mackey Park at 12 o'clock, and Granabellangary hosting Killedy also at noon on Sunday. So look, let's hope it'll get resolved. Whatever outstanding issues there will be resolved, and that the games will go ahead, and that we'll get the concluding stages to the Camogie Championship that we were hoping for.
Yeah, we won't delve any deeper into that, because when it's up in the air, there's no point, because these things could change, because we had spoke about the cost of the new Limerick jersey, and I'd say within half an hour after the podcast it had changed price, so we won't go any further on that. But I suppose before we go, there's been a lot of issues with referees and the treatment of referees in recent times, Matt. And these people are giving up their time, and without referees there'll be no games. And I think this isn't a Limerick issue, but it's more of a national issue. But I think we are going to get to a stage where if referees may strike, and if referees strike, there'll be no games, and you just appeal for respect to the referees, I think, is what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, Jack, I feel very, very strongly about this, and we had the referees being assaulted and being interfered with in Roscommon and in Wexford recently, and there was whispers coming out of an incident in Kerry. And where there's physicality involved, they tend to get highlighted. But I think it's an everyday occurrence in that referees and linesmen are being verbally abused, and are being shamefully verbally abused, and being done so in some cases by mentors and by spectators. And it is time, Jack, that something is done about it. Now, the chairman of Wexford GAA, who carries the name of Micheál Martin, not to be mixed up with the Taoiseach, but as far as I recall, he gave a figure over the airways yesterday that the number of referees in the county of Wexford had dropped from 77 to 50. That's a drop off of 1/3, and he was talking about 50 referees across all codes: hurling, football, ladies football, camogie. So we're heading into a serious situation, Jack. We're heading down a dark alley unless people wake up, cop on, and say this is not on. I've seen not just referees but umpires or linesmen. The umpires escape it to a certain degree, only to a certain degree, because they're at the opposite ends of the field, and in a lot of cases there is very few behind or any behind the goal. But the abuse that has been handed out to some linesmen as well as referees, Jack, it just has to stop. There is no place for it in our association. And right-thinking people, I don't know how the GAA are going to tackle it, but they have to tackle it with the severest of sanctions, because we want our games to continue. We cannot have games without referees. And as you were saying there, if the referees went on strike, perhaps, Jack, that might be the wake-up call that everybody needs.
Yeah, it struck me nearly more last night watching the soccer when Armenia got 2 players sent off for, I suppose, abusing the ref, for want of a better word, and you never see it in rugby. I don't know why that is. same individuals at the end of the day that often play both codes, so it's something that needs to be done. And as you said, it might take severe action for people to realise, but we just, I suppose, promote, respect first and foremost. It's fair enough to disagree with a decision, but go about it in a respectful manner, like you would if you disagree with your friend over an issue. So please God, we'll have no major issues in Limerick like that. We're seeing becoming far too prevalent throughout the country.
I get the heat at the moment, and I get all that, but it's gone to levels now, and it's gone to degrees now, Jack, that are totally unacceptable.
Yeah.
I am slow to say it's endemic, but I'll tell you, it's not far from it.
Yeah. We won't. Hopefully, won't be have to talk about that again. But it is important to bring that to light. I suppose since we last spoke, I put together, and moving on to hurling briefly, I put together a Limerick Senior Hurling Championship team of the group stage. Now, I did ring you on one morning just to see had you any other names, but looking at that list, is there anyone that you feel was harshly left out or was unlucky left out? Obviously, there's some names that had to be moved around to accommodate them, because there was a lot of kind of middle third players I thought were brilliant throughout the year, and obviously it's only from what I've saw and what I heard, but any standout names missing that you think?
Well, the only I was virtually in total agreement with you, actually. You will recall, but one player who I thought was outstanding when he was on a struggling team, I thought, was Ian O'Brien of Blackrock.
Yeah, cornerback.
I thought he had an absolutely fantastic season. His team were under pressure all season, but he stood up to it. And other than that, Jack, I would be in agreement for the most part with your team.
Yeah, I think Willie Griffin was another one that nearly single-handedly brought it there into the quarters. They got relegated, I suppose, conversely, but I think just I went with Paul O'Brien because Mungo won a couple of games in their return to senior, and Adair didn't pick up a win. If you had to pick a player of the championship so far, from what you've seen?
It's very hard to go beyond Kyle Hayes.
Yeah, I saw KP in 4 or 5 games. I've only seen a hand once, or maybe it was twice. But I heard Tom Morrissey has been phenomenal, and Oisin O'Reilly as well. But I think Kyle has, for a fella that I think is still probably better in the backs than he is in the forwards. You mentioned that to score 10 points from play in any game is just really incredible. But we'll have the hurling championship back in a couple of weeks. But for now, it's the turn of the football and the quarterfinals this week, and I'll get in to your predictions, Matt, and we'll start with looking back at last week. Again, it was a poor enough week for me. We both went with Monaleen and Newcastle, and you went with Adair. I went with Kieran's. I had 2 draws that didn't come to fruition. It was actually a draw in our own game. I didn't call that, and we both had Galbally to avoid the drop. You're getting closer there, Matt. You're within 2 points now. There's 4 games this week. Will you overtake me?
I don't know, Jack. Sure. I don't know what you have in the locker for this week.
Yeah, I suppose as it comes down to boiling point in the championship, you're starting to hit form, and I started to go the other way. And as I said, you ran away with it last year that I lost count, but I'll make sure to keep count even if I'm losing badly this year. But we'll start with the intermediate championship games, if that's all right. And if you want to give a first goal score, do. But I am springing this on you. So, Munger St Paul's versus St Pat's.
I'm going with Munger by 4 points.
Munger by 4 points. You made a face there before, and you're not really confident, are you? Or
no, I'm pretty confident. Yeah,
I'll go Munger as well. I'll go Munger by 3 points, but there is a shock in the cards in here somewhere. St Simmons versus Gerald Griffins.
I'm going with Simmons by 2.
Simmons by 2. Any reason for that, or just gut feeling?
I have a feeling that they will.
Well, I'm going the other way. I'm going Gerald Griffins by 4. Just think that the talent they have at their disposal. Not to say Simmons don't, but I just think they're stronger individuals. I'll go Gerald Griffins by 4. St Kieran's versus Monaleen.
I'm going St Kieran's by 2.
Kieran's by 2. You're definitely unsure about that by the way you said it.
I'm unsure of it. I am. That game is on a knife edge.
And
We
as
might
well,
have that. We might have that dreaded extra time if necessary.
yeah, I think Monagea as well, we alluded to, are a different animal in the knockout stages. That's the team we saw against Father Casey's. It's not going to be that scenario, but I do think Kieran's have something in the locker, and I'm going for Kieran's to win by 3 points. But as I said, I do think there's a shock in there somewhere. And Father Casey's versus Glen Palace Kennery.
I'm going for Father Casey's by 4.
Casey's by 4. I actually had Casey's by 4 as well. I'll go Casey's
I'll go Casey's by 3. So
okay.
you're always changing for me. I'll give you your first choice.
Yeah, I find it very hard to back against.
I'm generous today, Jack, but don't take it that will apply every day.
I'm cautious to go against KP because they have been a team that have invariably won in any sort of game, whether it is hurling and football over the last few years. But I do think Casey's will break that hoodoo. Like 13 years for Father Casey's is a famine to win a knockout game, not to mind win a championship. Like, so I think they'll get one over the line. And I suppose I won't ask you for a score or anything, but who will survive then in the senior championship?
Bally. And that's not being parochial.
No, I know it isn't. I think as well, as I mentioned earlier, that winning their last game, bringing momentum and facing a team that lost. And by the Landers, they lost us by 5, then they lost to Dare by a point. They beat Celtic Gales. Now they did get a trimming by KP, but they lost to Kieran's by a point as well, you know.
1 point, yeah.
They've been thereabouts. But Kelbally, you know, probably gave as good as Casey's got until they played Newcastle. So it's a difficult one. But I suppose there are predictions. We're both in agreement on Casey's, Kieran's and Monagea St Paul's, and we differ with St Sinnans and Gerald Griffin's. But I suppose best of luck to all the teams this weekend. As always, some team seasons will come to an end, unfortunately, but that's just the way it goes. And we'll have the semi-finals the following week. We'll have the last round of the Premier Intermediate Championship. We'll have semi-finals. Now, there's going to be clashes, so I don't know. Some games might be played at different times, but we'll do our best. But just over an hour, Matt. I suppose not short if you're listening to us, but a short-ish enough pod. But yeah, there's a full fixture list on the website in terms of the football games, and obviously if there's any more in the Camogie, I'll update on the website or follow Matt on Facebook and Twitter, and you'll get all the latest. But we've no other business, Matt. I think we can call it quits at 1 hour and 2.
We can call it quits.
Lovely. That's perfect. Hour and 3 minutes as we're talking there. A huge thank you to you, Matt, as always. And thank you to everyone for listening. I suppose get out and enjoy the games while we can before the weather well and truly turns. We have, as I said, the football quarterfinals this weekend. Hopefully it's in Camogie, and next week we'll have football and hurling to look forward to. So thank you for everyone that listened, and thank you to Matt. We'll talk soon.
Impression again, you get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomás O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time